Great, Regine. Well, let's talk about just why you came on the show and what's going on with your daughter. And maybe we can discuss ways in which we can unravel some of these difficulties that she's having.
Perfect. So my daughter is 6 years old. She's in first grade. And she's usually pretty social. If I take her to the park or if I take her anywhere, she'll kind of play with whoever's there. And there's never any issue about shyness. I mean, she's like the least kid shy I know. She's usually very outgoing and things like that. But I have noticed that as of late, she's been coming home from school and saying that right now, the way the kids play, it's almost like they play in clusters. So she has a friend that she's kind of connected with and they've kind of bonded with for the whole school year. And what's happening is that other little girls in another cluster are basically asking the child that my daughter's playing with to go and play with them, but they're not asking her. Mm-hmm. So she's starting to feel a little bit left out.
Boo, boo.
Yeah, she's
Makes
feeling
your
a little
heart
bit
hurt.
It does. And I'm just like, but you're so great, and I don't know how to even approach the conversation. I'll caveat that I myself, I try to envision myself in the situation, and I feel like I don't know what I would say, mostly because as a child myself, I was very sheltered. I really didn't have any friends growing up because my parents were very like, don't associate with anyone. School is not for friends. School is for education, that kind of thing. Okay. So I missed out on a lot of those interactions and trying to find those resolutions. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what to say.
Let's stop there. Yeah, let's stop there for 1 second. I think this is spot on. And I know you're not alone because I'm there. And I know lots of people are there. It's that we, not necessarily project, but we're living in our own, history and our own childhood. And we come to these experiences with our kids with this own thought in our head, like, I didn't have these social experiences. Maybe I really want my child to have these. And so it's even more of a heightened situation for me because I want her to have friends.
Yes.
Yes. And that's hard because of course we want our kids to have friends, but just to really like be able to differentiate, like, this is her experience. She doesn't have the parents you had. She's already very social. And so we have to keep in mind that she's coming at it from a very different perspective than you did as a child.
Yeah.
And it may feel like more of an emergency to us when we are living in our own childhood a little bit.
Yeah. And plus just knowing that as she gets older, there will be sort of even more involved and more in-depth, issues with friends and classmates and things like that. And I honestly don't know how to handle those situations. I'm like lost.
You're not alone. You're not
lost.
Alone.
Like I was the kid who was bullied and everything. So I was more of the loner.
And so that plays into it too, because you're seeing your child being, wronged, right? And so it might trigger that bullying or whatever happened to you in your childhood. And so it's like, it's almost likely, who knows, because we can't get in her head, but it's likely more impactful for you than it is for her.
Probably.
Yeah.
And she's pretty good about, expressing herself and sharing her feelings and things like that, which is great.
Yeah.
And I want her to always know that she can talk to me about those things and to come to me and to kind of unload, so to speak. So I don't want to put in a position where she's coming to me. I'm like, well, I don't really know what feels right, because I don't want to guide her the wrong way. In my heart, I'm automatically thinking like, how dare they not want to be friends with you?
You tell amazing. Those girls they don't want to play with you, then forget it. You will go play with someone else and you don't need that. So this go ahead.
Yeah. The other kind of factor that I'm considering is that she does go to how would I phrase it? She is the only
predominantly white school.
Yes. And she is the only little Black girl in her class. So I don't know if it's me playing that in my head is like, is that a factor? Now, she hasn't said that. She hasn't said that they've said anything or done anything, But in the back of my head, that's kind of playing. I'm like, well, how would I respond to that too? If that were the case, how would I respond to that? I don't even
Yeah.
know.
And I think that's something to always keep in mind and to be mindful of, it, not that it could be the case, but it could be the case
Yeah.
in a very subconscious way for those little girls. Who
Yeah.
knows? But to keep an
Yeah.
eye on that and to really, cue into the clues and what she tells you. And,
Mhm.
but again, we have our own experience around it. And like you said, we don't want to project that onto her experience, but being really mindful that there is that possibility.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. Let's get to, so with that in mind, I think it would be really good if have you ever downloaded my guide to journaling?
I haven't.
Okay,
I've heard
do
you
it.
talk about it, but I haven't. I actually haven't done it.
So download it, and then you're going to start to talk about what was like for you in first grade, what it
Oh
was like
God, I'm
not
gonna need
to,
a big journal.
yes, and what it was like to live with folks that believed that you didn't really need a social life, and to really talk about that in journaling to yourself and talking about it and really sussing that out to be able to mourn that and
Okay.
to start to let part of it go. Because if you can, then you can have a clearer mind when you come to her.
Okay.
And
Okay. No,
also
definitely do.
about and the bullying and the race stuff too, like what happened to you in grade school around race and how did that impact you, and being able to really dive into that too so that you can just be with it for a minute,
Yeah.
because I think it's important to be with it because all of that stuff affects the way we parent.
It definitely does. It definitely does. And even before I had my daughter, I knew that this is something therapy is going to have to handle. So I've put in the time and
Yeah.
even come to realize sort of the situation as it was, as it is now, and things like
Yeah.
that. And just to make sure that it's not bleeding into the relationship with my daughter, especially because what complicates it is that I am a single parent.
Yeah.
So she doesn't necessarily have the benefit of the secondary parent kind of coming in and balancing where I may be lacking. So.
But she has one good connected parent, and that's all she needs.
Okay.
That's all she needs is the therapist will tell you we need one parent who's on their side, and that's all they need to be a well-adjusted child.
Mm-hmm.
So she has enough with you. So
Okay.
know that. And then the other thing is too, I think for me, I went to a lot of therapy before I had kids, but then when I had kids, I was like, oh, this never came up in therapy. I didn't, oh, this situation didn't really, we didn't cover that. Okay. So there was, there's a lot of hosts of issues that come up after we have children that we may not have examined when we were, single people.
That's true.
Yeah. And
That's
so
true.
just diving in a little bit, just to unravel. And the other thing I can recommend too is what I recommend to my clients, which is a tool of hand-in-hand parenting, is to have a listening partner where you talk with someone who's doing this type of parenting once a week. It's another parent, and you
Okay.
just get to have a download like, this is so hard. I'm going to kick those girls' butts. Like, I don't want, I'm going to go to school and tell everybody. I had a friend recently tell me, and she's like, oh no, that's not how I handle it. This is how I handle it. I go to the school and I find the little girl and I say, hi, I'm missing so-and-so, and you will not be mean to my child. And I was like, I'm not sure that that's exactly how we should handle it. Although I want to, although I want to do that, but there might be a better way. So let's talk about the better way.
Okay.
I think, listen, life is hard. It really, really is hard. And there's in these situations, this happened to Pia, similar thing. The little girl said, if you play with anybody else, I'm never going to be your friend again. So she held her hostage kind of. It's a different situation, but it's a similar opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And of course I went right in and I was like, well, you tell that little girl that she cannot do that to you. And you tell that, and I gave her all this advice, and she came home the next day and I said, how did it go? And she goes, it was fine. I was like, oh, that's it. She's like, oh yeah, mom, it's fine. And then she wouldn't talk to me for several weeks about it. And then finally she broke down crying. She's being mean to me and this and that. I was like, well, I thought you told her. She's like, no, I didn't tell her. I couldn't tell her because I had given her the 40-year-old advice that was not applicable to the second grader. Mm-hmm. And she couldn't follow that advice. And so she felt embarrassed. So she never came back to me with what was going on, because I had, instead of listened to her, I had given her the advice she couldn't follow.
Mm-hmm.
And really, they know what they need to do inside. We just have to be able to sit by and watch them do it. And that's becomes the really hard part. And so what worked for me with Pia was to say, honey, I'm so sorry this girl's being unkind to you.
Mm-hmm.
I really am. This sounds like it's a really hard time for you. And then I listened. And when I did that, she started really coming to me every single day with all of the issues that were happening. And I just listened and was empathic. And it was excruciating, Regine. I mean, I wanted to wring the little girl's neck. Of course, it's not the little girl's fault, right? She's coming with her own experience. She's figuring out social situations too. These little girls that are trying to steal your daughter's friend away, they're operating in their own, stuff too. And they're just little kids. And so when I did that, and I listened and I listened and I listened, and finally, Pia told her 2 months, maybe 2.5 months later, after excruciating pain, she said, I told her, Mom, I'm never playing with her again. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank God. But they have to get there. And that's part of learning. So if we come in and also fix it for them, if we tell the other little girls or the other little girls' moms, we text them and say, hey, did you guys know that this is happening? Which I've wanted to do. That was a consideration. Right. But then how are those little girls going to treat your daughter? Are they going to take it out on her even more? And have we told your daughter, we don't believe you can fix your own problems. Mommy can do it. Mommy will always do it for you. And then I've had clients who have kids at 16 years old, and the 16-year-old's coming to them and being like, I don't know what to do. Well, what should I do about every little thing? Because we want them to, unfortunately, we want them to suffer some so that they can learn.
I think it just scares me and of course, I'm sure fear doesn't help this situation at all. But what scares me is I just don't want this to negatively impact kind of where she is. She's so open and willing to be friends with anyone and everyone. And I just would hate for that to almost not damage her, but I guess leave some kind of lasting impact that then impacts how she connects with people moving forward.
Or can we look at it the other way? Can we look at it, maybe she's going to learn about what people she does want to give her friendships to and what people she doesn't want to give her friendships to. And I think what you're scared of is her losing her innocence, right? Her losing that, she's no longer a baby anymore. And now she's having to deal with part of what is the harsh world. Yeah. And that's so hard to see our babies start to have to deal with life.
Yeah. Well, that, and then being alone for all intents and purposes, just if the other kids are kind of all playing with themselves, because then what she tells me is when her friend leaves and goes to play with these other girls, then she just plays by herself. Ooh. And that is the part that I just don't want it to, all right, nobody wants to play with me. What's wrong with me?
Right. Kind of. And is that how you felt, you think, somewhat as a kid?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. 100%.
Does she say when she plays alone that she's sad about it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is the reason why she brought it up. She said, it made me sad that I had to play alone today. And that's when I asked, well, why did you have to play alone? And that's when she kind of explained the situation.
So let's role play a little bit, and we can make her feel better about feeling bad, because we can have empathy for her. But what we can't do is change it. What we can't do is make people play with her or give her. Yeah, we really can't, unfortunately. But I have a feeling that every kid in this world has experienced some similar, right, at some point or another. And it's okay because they learn to be resilient, right?
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm going to get through this because I have a mom who's empathic and she is going to listen to my feelings, and I'm going to have a really hard time, but I'm going to be able to get through it.
Yeah.
Because I have an empathetic, supportive, kind mom. And then I'm going to build resiliency.
Okay.
So although this is quote unquote a hard, bad situation, it's also a situation where she's learning resiliency early on in life. And that's a good thing.
Okay.
So let's role play. You're going to be your daughter. What does she say to you? And I'm going to be what I think you should say to her in response. And so these are some things you can do when you're with her.
Okay. So she would say, we always go through this, how was your day kind of conversation. So she would say, Mommy, I was really sad today when we had playtime.
Oh, boo boo. I'm sorry. What happened?
I was playing with person X, and these other girls were playing, and they asked her if she could go play with them. And she went to go play with them. And then I had to play at playtime by myself.
Oh, that sounds really hard. I'm so sorry that happened.
And I was so lonely.
I bet you were, honey bunny. I understand. That was really hard. And maybe she'll get to tears right there.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what she needs.
Yeah.
Is to get to tears. Because then she can start to really offload that hurt. And then when she offloads the hurt, she'll feel better.
Okay. All right.
She'll get there. Yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully it's not an ongoing thing, but she's mentioned it a few times. And I'm like, I talked to my sister about it, and I'm like, oh, this is what happened. I don't know what to say. And she's kind of like,
well, the other thing is this, what we just did is good for a 2-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 26-year-old, a 46-year-old.
Yeah.
Like this technique, this idea of empathy and not fixing and not offering opinion or advice or not intervening is a way to interact with our kids on many, many different, many scenarios, almost every scenario. I didn't get the red cup. Oh, honey, I'm sorry you didn't get the red cup. That's really hard.
Yeah.
I didn't get the lead in the play. I know you didn't get it's going to happen over and over and over again with our kids.
That's true.
Unfortunately, from now until they die.
Forever.
Till we die. That will happen. And it's like, how do we really not fix it?
Yeah, I definitely didn't think about it that way. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest part, the not giving her something like, your takeaway is this, and this is what you do. And that's the hardest part.
Here is our plan. Now you go to point A, and then you'll get to point B, and then we're going to get to point C, and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen like that. It's just heartache. It's real life heartache.
Yeah. I guess as parents, we're always just like, what could I do to avoid it?
Yes.
But heartache is a part of life. So
it really is. And I think we really want to fix it, because watching our children struggle brings up our own old struggles, and it hurts our heart even deeper, because we're like, oh, she's hurting. I'm hurting from my old past. Everything's hurting. This feels like an emergency.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I will definitely try that.
You can do it.
Hard.
You can do it, Regine.
It'll be hard, but I'll try it.
You can do it. Okay. Now let's do reverse role play. Okay. But also I think another thing to do is don't ask her how her day is, because it's probably pretty like high on the radar right now.
Well, that might be hard to avoid.
Oh, because we have a routine.
We have a routine, and if I don't ask her, if I don't ask her, that wasn't English. If I don't ask her, she will preemptively ask me, well, Mommy, how was your day? And if I don't ask how her day, well, you didn't ask me how my day was.
Okay.
So she's very
yes. Okay, that's fine. You can totally do it. You might try a couple times just saying, I really missed you today.
Okay.
And then she might say, how was your day? And I can say, my day was great. Yours? And maybe you guys can move out of this how is your day thing? And then if you let her come to you organically when she's ready, she might tell you more, and she might be more willing to get to her feelings.
Yeah.
And it might just be a more authentic experience.
Yeah. Okay.
Just play around with it. You don't have to
Yeah.
get rid of it either. You can keep
Yeah.
it if you want, but just play around with it and see.
Okay.
Okay, let's do reverse role play. Now you're going to ask me how my day was.
How was your day?
Well, today at lunch, those little girls, they took my friend away, and I had to be all by myself again.
Oh, I'm so sorry that happened.
Yeah, Mommy, I was so lonely.
I'm so sorry. So sorry. I'll give you a hug.
I'd love a hug, Mommy. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
And just say, I know it was hard. I know that sounds really hard. I'm right here. I'm listening to you. I understand.
Okay.
Did you
So really
download
emphasizing that I'm listening.
Yeah. Did you
Okay.
download my guide to empathy?
That I did. Yes.
Okay. So maybe take a look at those phrases. There's also
Okay.
a podcast around empathy. If you have a listen to it, it might spark some
I
different.
listened to that just the other day, actually.
Okay, good. So there might spark some like things you can say. 80% of it really is just listening.
Okay. Okay.
Just be there.
I mean, I try to always, I feel like I have to have 4 ears instead of 2 to compensate again for there's just one of me.
Yes.
So I'm always, I'm listening. I'm here for you. I always want her to know that I'm there. So I'm always reiterating that I'm here. Do you want to talk? Do you want to tell me how you feel? Do you want to tell me your feelings?
So sweet.
And she's always really, really good about that. So.
That's so good. She's an only child.
She's an only child.
Yeah. So that makes sense too. You get a lot more input from an only child because you're their person.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Well, this is so good. I'm curious to see how you feel about it after a few times of doing it with her and not feeling like you have to fix it. It might make you feel better knowing like, I can't fix this and it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll definitely have to work on that part.
Don't we all?
I'll have to work on that part because I was already making a list. I'm going to text her parents. I was already like running down that I'm going to do, because I have done the whole, going to the playground, and I'm so-and-so's mom and she's playing very nicely. And I think you guys should play nicely together. She's doing it. You can do it too. I've gone there and I've kind of caught myself afterwards, like, really shouldn't get involved.
Yeah. The little girl's like, I'm sorry, what did you say?
Yeah. She's like, why are you talking to me? Yeah. But and as she gets older, I'm realizing, okay, I need to take a step back, and she has to learn how to resolve them herself.
Yes.
But I was like, even if I needed to give guidance, I wouldn't. Sorry, kid.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think and if she asks you, sometimes kids will say, well, what should I do? And my first response is, what do you think you should do?
Okay.
What do you think would be a good thing to do? Because Pia did that with this incident in 2nd grade. And she said, well, I said, well, what if you could tell her anything? You don't have to, but if you could tell her anything you wanted to tell her, what would you say to her? And she would say, you're mean. You're so mean. And I'm like, yeah, say it. And I said, you don't have to tell her, but let's just pretend if we could just tell her anything. So eventually, if she starts to ask you, you could start to role play and not giving advice, but empowering her to like have her feelings around it. And then eventually she'll get to her own voice around it. And maybe she'll say something.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's very helpful. No, I will definitely give that a try.
Okay, perfect. I'm so glad you wrote to me. Regine, for those of you who are listening, DM'd me and I loved her question. And so I just asked her to be on the podcast, and I really appreciate you coming on it. I am so grateful to be able to like help other people, because I'm sure this is a common question for lots of people out there.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, because I was really just stumped.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.